Hi, I'm Ron Spurnberg, co-founder and CEO of Hi Mama. Welcome to our podcast about all things early childhood education. In this week's episode, we talk about mentorship and teacher empowerment in the childcare setting with the Director of Education at Childcare Network, Jamie Rechkemmer. Childcare Network is the fourth largest provider of daycare and early learning services in America, based in Columbus, Georgia. They are providing opportunities for childcare staff to take on a leadership role in their center through the education coordinator position. We also discuss the importance of taking professional development learnings and applying them in the classroom. To learn more about how you can empower your preschool teachers by being intentional with opportunities for growth, stay tuned for this week's episode of the Preschool Podcast. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about your background and how you got into the field of early childhood education?
I think I came into the field of early childhood education like so many of our professionals do. I loved kids. And so as a young person, I was looking for a job after school and found a position in an early care and education program and didn't think for, at the beginning that they would actually turn into a career. But a couple things happened. One, I realized that it just kind of filled something in my spirit, doing good things for kids and families. Also, I realized really quickly that children have an amazing capacity to learn. And I had always wanted to teach, but I thought I wanted to teach big kids. And what I realized pretty quickly is that young children have this just innate desire to learn new things and to share that with one another. And that was very rewarding for me as an early professional in the field. But I was really lucky to have some great mentors who gave me lots of opportunities in the classroom and outside the classroom. So I've been a classroom teacher and I've been an early care and education program director. I have had the opportunity to work in nonprofit with child care resource and referral, serving both children and families and helping them to access high quality care, but also working with leaders in early childhood to develop leadership skills. I was able to write curriculum and publish, which was a way of tying the early childhood field into another passion of mine, which was writing and creative development. And then, fortunately, about 7 years ago, I entered into an amazing relationship with my company, Childcare Network, and have been able to have such a unique opportunity in working with kids and families and working with teachers here to provide access to high quality care, to improve professional development opportunities for teachers, to encourage access to higher education for our teachers. It's just been what I can honestly say has been a dream opportunity for me, and I'm so thankful for that.
Can you just give us a bit of a background on Childcare Network?
Absolutely. Childcare Network is a early care and education organization based out of Columbus, Georgia. We are the fourth largest provider of early education services in the United States. We have more than 200 schools, and we serve, I think, upwards of 25,000 children and families across the states that we serve. Childcare Network has a couple missions in mind. One, of course, is to provide high quality early care and education. We particularly work to serve our children and families as well. So we participate in community partnerships. We support families through resources. We partner with federal programs and state programs to offer different types of access to early care, whether it might be through child care services or through Head Start services, early Head Start, public pre-K, and as well as having a very comprehensive school-age program for when children are out of school and during the summer when they need full-time activities in a summer camp environment. And we really make it our goal to provide high quality, safe educational programming that's affordable for our working families who need these types of services.
As director of education, this is quite a different role in a large company like Childcare Network, that's the fourth largest provider of childcare services in the U.S., versus being on the ground working with children, which is where you sort of where your original passion was in getting involved in early childhood education. What keeps you passionate in your role as director of education?
Thankfully, when I need it, I can find a classroom and some kids, because that grounding in direct service to children, getting on the floor and playing with toys and talking with kids and watching them learn, that need never goes away. And so I'm so thankful that I can step into a classroom, any day of the week and still get on the floor and play. But for me today, and you're right, it is a big difference. And one of the things I think today that helps drive me in this role as director of education for this large group is looking at the teachers as being, part and parcel to the work that I do as well. So when I was a teacher in a classroom, I saw my work as being in service of the kids, and it still is, obviously. But today I also get to look at this audience of teachers who is able to put some of the creativity and development in our curriculum into play in their classrooms, because we're not just growing high quality learning for kids, we're also hoping to provide lots of learning opportunities for our teachers as well.
And do you see that as a trend over the last few years where there has been more of a focus on providing those professional development opportunities for teachers and help developing leadership skills in your teachers, both of which you mentioned earlier? Is that something that's changed quite a bit over the last few years, do you think?
I definitely think that has become a primary focus in early care and education. We have come to a point in time where we finally have really substantial research with longevity. Early childhood is a fairly new field in the history of time, and so we finally have had enough time and enough attention and enough emphasis on the value of early education to have some good quality research on child outcomes and on the types of leadership competencies. And one of the things I think that we realize in our field is that there is an absolute essential need for formal higher education when it comes to high quality classrooms and interactions with children and outcomes for children. But we also see every day that the high quality practice is just as essential, and that practice comes from professional development opportunities and coaching with other experts in the field and professional learning communities where teachers can share their ideas with one another and share their challenges with one another and get support from their colleagues. And I'm thankful to, in my career, have had all of those opportunities. I think that being part of leadership cohorts and part of professional learning communities and having mentors who took the time to invest in me as a young teacher and a young professional in early childhood. Now I can give those opportunities back to the teachers that I interact with on a daily basis. And we see that too in our QRIS systems and in some of the standards that are coming out, early learning guidelines and federal and state requirements for high quality. There's a definite emphasis not only on formal education, but also on professional development specific to early childhood best practice in learning environments with kids, and then also with creating professional learning communities so that teachers can share their experiences with one another and benefit from that experience across all of the different types of classrooms we work in.
Very cool. One of the things I've heard you mention a couple of times now already is mentors and how important mentors were for you early on. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. I think the early childhood environment is very unique, and education in general is very unique in that, throughout the day, we spend most of our time with young people. We come to, our classroom, and we spend hours and hours with young people. And then, we go home at the end of the day, and we don't always have an opportunity to really find the adults that are in our career and in our experience and share what we're doing with them. And so I think in early childhood in particular, we have to be very intentional about creating opportunities for mentorship. And, some of the ways that has happened for me in my life certainly has been identifying teachers that worked at my school that had things about their classroom that I enjoyed, and characteristics about their teaching personalities that I thought were, really attractive. And so I would watch them and ask them questions, and thankfully, they were willing to share their experiences with me as well. But I've also had the opportunity to participate in very intentional development of, leadership teams and mentor teams where people are paired with one another around, a common denominator. Maybe it's the age group that they prefer to work with, or maybe it's geography, or, it could even be, collective higher education experiences, and they come together and observe one another and offer each other suggestions for things that they could do differently, and celebrate the things that they're doing really well. I think that ultimately successful mentoring is a commitment to helping other people in our field become great at what they do, because the more great people we have in early childhood, the better results we're going to have as a group. And ultimately that's going to be children that are receiving high quality education and becoming lifelong learners themselves. I think that's the other critical element too to any type of mentoring and coaching relationship, is that we have to keep an open mind to learning at all times. And that has been one of the privileges that I've had, and the mentors that I've been able to work with, the coaches that I've been able to work with. They always saw it as being a mutually beneficial relationship. They were there to help me grow, but they also were looking for opportunities to grow themselves, and celebrated with me when they were learning and growing in their careers alongside me. And so that just made the relationship even more special, and it grew even greater for us both.
One of our focuses with the Preschool podcast is developing the future leaders of early childhood education, and we think leadership is a key part of the field of early childhood education moving forward in a positive direction, and you mentioned that as well. We think that's super important, which includes being open to learning all the time, and also something else which you touched on, which I might just ask you to expand on a bit further, is being intentional and providing those intentional opportunities to develop your mentorship capabilities or your leadership skills. Are you doing anything like that at Childcare Network in terms of being proactive to provide mentoring or leadership opportunities for staff?
We are, and I'm super excited to be able to talk about it too. So one thing that we do, maybe more formally, is provide access to a lot of professional development around being a mentor and being a coach, so that when teachers are interested in having a relationship like that with another of their colleagues, there definitely is some nuance to being a supportive coach and being a supportive mentor and using your experience to benefit other people. But then we also, have this really unique opportunity to create an environment that is a learning culture, and to create an environment where people are encouraged to be supportive of one another. And one way we've done that very recently is through the introduction of a role that we call education coordinator. And the education coordinator is a classroom teacher, but as a classroom teacher, they have really demonstrated not only a standard of excellence in their classroom that is creating the best possible circumstances for learning for their kids. But they've also shown leadership skills and shown an interest in developing others and shown an interest in sharing experience and being supportive. And so in that role as an education coordinator, they have the opportunity to organize training and deliver it, or organize morale building, conduct observations and offer coaching, spend some time in other teachers' classrooms, giving the benefit of their experience to the other teachers. But like I mentioned before, what is so beautiful about that is that in getting feedback from our education coordinators, they all comment on how they have grown professionally through this experience, and they see the work of their teachers, fellow teachers in the program, and they bring that same experience back to what was already a high quality classroom that they were running, but they see the opportunity to grow, in their roles as education coordinators. We also encourage our teachers to participate in community learning opportunities, professional development with other early educators across the county that they might work in. We organize conferences for our directors to come together and not only be leaders in the company, but also to see leadership from others. So I feel like we do an excellent job at that. And we've taken a lot of cues from public school systems that are organizing professional learning communities, and certainly, programs like Head Start and Early Head Start and our state pre-K programs that have super fantastic leadership development programs. We, are committed to bringing that type of leadership development to our early childhood program here at Childcare Network as well.
Very cool. I really like this idea of the education coordinator. How does that work? Does somebody kind of put up their hand and say, hey, I'd love to be the education coordinator? Or does the director of the center or somebody else in the organization say, hey, Julie in the toddler classroom is really showing signs of being a great leader, and we think she'd be a great fit for the education coordinator. So let's talk to her and see if she's interested in that role. Like, how does that work?
I think honestly it's a combination of a couple different things, and very unique to the setting that we're selecting the education coordinator in. So, in some cases, you might have a teacher who is very eager to take on more responsibility and have other opportunities within the organization. And so they will be, very enthusiastic and very vocal about that interest, and kind of throw their name into the hat as being interested in the education coordinator role at the school. And in other cases, and I think that this is one of the things that is somewhat unique and special about early educators are amazing individuals, but they spend so much of their time celebrating children and families and others that they don't always know how to celebrate themselves. And so it is oftentimes a director or a district manager who will notice the leadership skills, like you mentioned, see the strengths in the classroom, and then bring those to the attention of the teacher. Gosh, you're doing so much great stuff in your room. I love seeing you interact with the children and families. I've noticed how often you are in other classrooms offering suggestions and offering assistance and offering your time. I would love for you to do that more formally at your school. How would you feel about that? And so it's very much a mutual, decision in that respect, that a teacher will say that they're interested in being the education coordinator, and then at the same time the director has noticed these capacities and wants that teacher in that role. So usually it's a perfect fit, and once we identify that person and they're feeling confident about those skills and capacities in that role and opportunity, then we usually just see things take off so fast. And the benefits to the school are almost immediate in morale and in increased communication, because we have another channel for bringing information to the teachers a little more informally. The parents, notice the difference or notice the opportunity for the teacher. We try and recognize them in a formal way with, a different name tag and a plaque outside their door. So it really becomes the community now, the community family at the school that's supporting that teacher in the role, which then, just pushes the cycle even, faster in terms of giving them confidence, and then they're more, willing and able to work in the classroom. So it's just an overall really amazing opportunity for everyone involved.
Very cool. One of the themes that we have on the Preschool podcast really is about the importance of the environment and the culture in a child care center. And that's something that's really hard to create, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of intentional planning with something like the education coordinator position. So that's a very interesting way to approach it. I like it. I think one of the things we hear a lot is, instead of focusing in on a lot of the operational details of what's happening in terms of processes and this type of thing, that focusing in on the really fundamental piece of culture is really what makes the biggest shift in a child care center. So that's really cool to hear.
Well, I think that we have to look at relationships as being one of the essential functions for processes in an early ed environment. So, we definitely have come to believe in and find the benefit in having strong relationships with our children and families. But we also, certainly can find the benefit in having strong relationships with our teachers and our administrators. But sometimes the relationship that we don't spend enough time with is that relationship amongst the teachers themselves and the school family that we can create. And so that's another, great benefit of this role at the school, is they, serve as kind of a leader of the school family. But interestingly enough, one of the, side benefits is to those processes, that when the education coordinator can be a leader in creating a culture at the school, then the director can take a little bit of that off her plate and apply it to some of the other, director-related processes. So we see this side benefit and also in the operations at the school, because there's just more cohesion, and with that cohesion, comes just a better process overall. So
I'll tell you what I love what you just said, because what you're saying is essentially you're empowering the early educators on your team to take on more responsibility, take on more accountability, and that's actually taking work off of your plate as a director, which I strongly believe in that model, because not only are you giving those great opportunities to people on your team, you're going to create great culture amongst your team. Like you said, it's also opening up time for yourself as a director or administrator to focus on the things that you're passionate about and about delivering the vision that you have for your center. So that's really cool. One of the things I wanted to just ask you about a little bit more, you've mentioned a couple times professional development. I heard the term professional learning communities. Can you give us a little bit more meat about, what do you mean by that? Like, what does that look like, professional development opportunities?
Sure. Well, obviously, it starts with formal education, and formal education around early childhood has, grown just exponentially, even since I was in undergraduate work in early childhood. And thankfully that wasn't too long ago. But one thing that we unfortunately do notice at times in formal education related to early childhood is that there's not a lot of practical application opportunities. There's obviously a lot of classroom time, but we don't see too many early education programs, or I should say I don't see too many early education programs teacher education programs that have a lot of practical application working with kids. So we get a highly educated group coming in, but they still require training and professional development on the real life stuff that happens in a classroom and in areas like communicating with families and communicating with one another and building community partnership and accessing resources for families. But we also, obviously, as we're building our school family and inviting children and families into our classrooms, we see that each one of those children and those families come to us with a set of very special and unique needs. And so we need to train and educate our teachers around the needs of children and families, whether it might be, different family systems or diversity and, culturally responsive care, whether it's around autism or, developmental learning delays, if it's around helping children to manage behavior better and develop social skills. Those types of things require regular and consistent emphasis, focus, and updated training. So we try and provide professional development in a number of different ways. Considering the needs of our staff, we have a number of online programs that our staff have access to, and we offer these at no cost. So really it involves them finding the time and opportunity, which we also try and support. There's, community access to professional development through agencies like Smart Start and our public school system. And so we try and organize live and interactive professional development. Internally, we do other types of online learning. I've become myself much more qualified to deliver online webinars, and we try and use platforms that are somewhat interactive so that teachers from Georgia to Florida to Texas to North Carolina to Kentucky to Tennessee can all come together online and use web platforms to speak with one another and chat with one another and share ideas. But I think the most important piece is that after offering the professional development, there are opportunities for formal reflection and observation. So we, really encourage the teachers and provide opportunities for them to take that learning and apply it in their classroom. And then either through an observation where we observe this work and then offer coaching and feedback, or through a reflection that the teacher offers on her own, we can hear, how she feels like she applied or he applied that work in the classroom and what a difference it made and what learning they would like to continue. So I think the big picture is that we just try and stay in touch with our teachers and get feedback from them on a regular basis through surveys and reviews and whatnot. What type of learning would you like more of? What are the learning styles that work best for you, and how can we support you as you continue your professional development? Because we firmly believe that that is a key component to professionalizing our field. Which I think for anyone in early care and education is a primary goal, so that our field, our group of educators, the collective knowledge that we have about children and families is respected and recognized. And in order for that to happen, it has to be delivered by people that are highly qualified and highly trained and confident enough to speak about it.
Absolutely. Working at a technology company, I love that you're using technology to do online training. So that's great. And I, as an engineer by study, I also love that you're taking the learnings from your professional development webinars and following up with applying those learnings in the classroom, because that's really important. I think something that can go wrong with a lot of webinars and workshops is, everybody's really excited at the time, but you got to follow through and actually apply that new learning in the classroom, and that's the real important part. We talked about a lot of exciting things that are happening in early childhood education at Childcare Network. What excites you most about what's happening in early childhood education right now?
Well, there's just so much to choose from. I think for me, and as the director of education, one of the things that I am able to work on is curriculum development. And I think that, there's some definite standards when it comes to early education. We talk a lot about, obviously, school readiness and preparing children to be successful in kindergarten. But yeah, I am particularly interested in and very passionate around some of the other areas of education that early childhood programs have the privilege of touching. So I, get really excited about opportunities in our infant toddler classrooms. Because we spend so much time and we dedicate so much funding to our pre-K environment, and yet the research, so clearly tells us over and over and over again that learning opportunities begin at birth, if not before, and that all of the learning opportunities that we're offering our infants and toddlers are creating this foundation for the learning experiences that they'll have in pre-K and beyond to really settle and take hold. But they've got to have, they got to have the gray matter. They've got to have the sponge to soak it all in order to really make a success of it in pre-K and beyond. So I certainly get very excited when I have the opportunity to work with infant toddler teachers. I get super excited when I hear of new funding that's being dedicated specifically to our infant toddler programs at the federal level and the state level, which we've seen a ton of emphasis on lately. But then I also really, really love to see the trend towards professionalizing our infant toddler classrooms. So we have long had formal education around pre-K and kinder, around K3, but I'm starting to see a lot more emphasis on preparing our infant toddler educators in a very specialized way, recognizing that the work that they're doing with our youngest learners is really creating, the environment for what will come next. And then also, completely different vein, but another area that I am very passionate around is some of the learning that takes place outside of those traditional areas around the fine arts and around wellness. I'm very fortunate to, have been supported in our efforts to include fine arts in our curriculum and include wellness opportunities in our curriculum and include really unique literacy activities in our curriculum that not only enhance the learning experience for kids, but also really enhance the teaching experience for teachers. And I think that for me is just, the common denominator across everything that I do. The direct service is to kids, but I always have to consider our teachers as well, because it's the interactions that they're going to have. It's the enthusiasm that they put into teaching. It's the, interest and passion that they have for learning and developing themselves that is transferred to the high quality environment they're providing for kids. So I'm always interested in how I can take any trend in early childhood and look at its application for kids and families, but ultimately too, where is the benefit for the teachers and how can we use that to grow them as well?
Yeah, that's something we can't forget about is the teachers. And I know we place a lot of emphasis on that at Hi Mama. It sounds like you place a lot of emphasis at it at Childcare Network. And it's a growing question of, obviously we're focusing on improving learning outcomes for children, but by developing teachers' capabilities, that's a really great way to ultimately improve outcomes for children by making them really great at what they do. So that's very cool. We also think it's very important that the early childhood education community shares information, knowledge, and learning amongst each other. Where do you go to get information online or otherwise about what's happening in early childhood education?
Well, I, belong to all kinds of groups on Facebook and groups on Google Plus, and I get news feeds and type in search engines. I am not a techie, Ron. I'll have to admit that. But I am thankful that there are other people who can set up my computer to just drop things like that in my inbox or drop things like that in my news feed. Thank goodness. But also, I'm very thankful for the early childhood community in general. Really provides a lot of access to up-to-date professional development, whether it be through state organizations or national organizations like NACE. I am privileged to participate with a group called the Early Childhood Education Consortium, which is a collection of early childhood leaders in the industry, serving kids, state associations, and then service providers that have a vested interest in a particular area of the early childhood field. And we all come together a couple times a year and share, things that are going on for us individually, but then talk collectively about what's happening across the field of early childhood. There are great publications, and their printed publications are kind of losing a little bit of their luster, but I still like to turn pages at times, and so there are some trade journals that I like to look at that are particularly written for early childhood professionals across all the areas of expertise in education. So Early Childhood Exchange is one that I enjoy, but then I also try and stay on top of some of the more academic journals because I think that in my role in particular as Director of Education, knowing that I have a channel to communicate with our teachers and with our families, I think that it's one of the responsibilities I have is to stay very current in my knowledge of what's happening in the field, and then take some of that maybe more technical language and research-ish stuff, and then bring it to real life application for our teachers and families. What does it mean when looked at outcomes across a longitudinal study for X number of children? What does that mean to you and your family? What does that mean to you and your classroom? Research is all well and good, and if we use it, if we apply what we learn through these research studies to the benefit of the children and families that we're touching on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I think applying academic research in the classroom is a big opportunity for early childhood education. So I'm glad to hear that you're doing that at Childcare Network, because I think that's super key. So I'd love to see more great academic research in early childhood education, and definitely more people like yourself that are actually applying the learnings from that in the classroom. Last couple questions. If I'm an educator listening to this podcast and I think Childcare Network sounds like a cool place, where can I go learn more about Childcare Network?
Well, you would go to our website, I guess, to be the first place to start, childcarenetwork.com. Easy to find and easy to navigate.
Okay. And if I'm thinking to myself, Jamie sounds really cool, I'd like to talk to her about early childhood education, about Childcare Network, about anything, how would someone get in touch with you?
I would love to say that I have a LinkedIn account, but I don't, and I probably shouldn't admit that. I don't know how to use LinkedIn right now. So the best way to get me would be via email, I would suggest. And I'm happy to share that. It's J. Rechkemmer, Rechkemmer, at childcarenetwork.com, or just the old-fashioned way, a Google search, Facebook.
Awesome. Okay. Good stuff. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, Jamie. It was great having you as a guest.
Thank you for inviting me, Ron. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it thoroughly. And gosh, it's so great to have the opportunity to, to talk about early education. So thank you very much.
What's your name?
Michaela.
Michaela. How are you?
Hi.
You having fun playing?
Yes.
It's a nice day, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. What's your favorite thing to play out here?
Playing monsters.
You like to play monsters? Do you like the swings? Okay. What else you like to do?
Play my Dora bike.
Oh, with your Dora bike? Oh, Okay. Do you ride fast?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Well, have fun here. All right.